you personally have any philosophy? I mean, like you have this book, Tom has this book called The Tao of blockchain, I think. And the Tao is kind of a like Asian, I think that is Chinese current. How they, if there's full of symbolisms or they are not, or you're trying to introduce some kind of a spiritual or not, it's just a specific philosophy or not. Do you have any inspiration like involved in the story?
One of the beautiful things about working in the land of fiction is that you have hindsight. So you can write things that you think are really interesting and funny, and you can make this wonderful world come alive, and then you can go out and create that world, and then you can actually reanalyze what you first wrote and change that world in real time to fit certain, like, to enhance whatever you thought you were doing, which is kind of fun. But the Tao of blockchain, I'm interested in Taoism to a certain extent. I don't really practice it, but I like the ideas that are around that whole philosophy. But I guess what my core interests for driving most of what I do are like based around, you know, the question of why do people do what they do, and tied up in that is like identity as well, like and how we sort of interpret one another, and this kind of, I guess, can be encapsulated in the Fakefluencer term to a certain extent, and crypto, obviously, all these altcoins and different projects, they're basically like subsets of the religion that is Bitcoin, in my mind. And, you know, hence creating the Ministry of Decentralization and all these other kind of wacky ideas that religious groups tend to come up with. From a comedy perspective, what is important to mention is that I chose the mockumentary format because it's more forgiving. It's my first film project, probably going to fuck it up, but when it's presented in a mockumentary style, you can get away with certain fuck ups. For example, I've noticed when I've rough cut some scenes, some of the mess ups that we've done, luckily, we've stayed in character and everything, are just so bloody hilarious that they fit in. So it's almost like the real kind of mess that we're kind of doing as a production team ourselves as we go along and learn is able to be baked into the story, because we decided to make a film about a guy making a film. It gave us that luxury to play there. And the driving force for this as well, what keeps me motivated is to try to, do that thing that I wanted to do, which is to show the global economy and the crypto economy are pretty much the same. Only one of them involves this magical decentralization, which people that don't understand crypto are actually quite intrigued by. I think a lot of people do believe centralization is kind of damaging to society, when decisions are made in faraway places. Like the Brexit thing, they were blaming decisions being made in the EU, even though that wasn't, it wasn't really true. There was a few decisions that are made, but they were related to immigration, and that was that was nothing to do with the internal decision making of the British Parliament. So those kind of, I think people don't really, and I mean, if you take that into a digital realm as well, it gets lost even further, right? What does that mean, to decentralize myself digitally?
Your parents and my parents' age, if we try to introduce this kind of concept and took them to the digital world, number one, they're doing like baby steps in my, well, on my side and on my experience. And then you're trying to talk about more complex concepts. Like, you lost me. I need you to take my hand and drive me like exactly what is that. So I'm gonna stop like making any transaction from my bank. I'm gonna stop walking to the bank. I'm gonna do it through my phone. Are you gonna show me how to do it? Is this safe? There's like a lot of things are going on with prior generations, and it's really important. You were saying about how they get like really confused and excited or lost about the news, about Brexit, about lots of things that are going on. It's the news that they're watching. They're still watching television, and I found here in Jersey that is still reading the newspaper. So that's really, really interesting because they're not checking maybe Reddit, that it's an app or it's a really good media to inform yourself. They don't have any access to that kind of tools. So that's shocking.
It's the information age, but it only favors those that are able to stay skeptical, but also are curious. I mean, if you expect your news media to be delivered to you via a newspaper, and you subscribe to this one view, then it's very easy to maintain a very narrow perspective on what goes on in your world, and live inside your little bubble. People say that they live on Facebook, they get their news on Facebook, they're in like little echo chambers, bubbles. Those bubbles have always existed, right? They were even smaller before, I guess. So it favors those that they like to go searching. They don't want it given, they want to go find it. And that's sort of the same can be said for products. People who like want to be advertised to, they want the products to come and find them and then persuade them to buy them, rather than wait till the moment comes that, I actually need this thing now, I'll go and find it. Where can I find? Look, there's plenty of choice. So that might be a useful analogy for cryptocurrencies as well. Most of the focus is on the trading, getting rich, financial, decentralized finance, blah blah blah, all that kind of money related stuff. And then at the other end, like, there's these kind of wildly libertarian people that don't believe we should have governments or taxes or all that shit. And then somewhere in the middle, there's like, well, hang on a second. There's people like we have with us guys who are like, I can look at the whole spectrum of available products here, and I can distinguish what is actually of use. So yeah, maybe that's a useful analogy, but it's going to be tough because now we're seeing all the central banks around the world launching digital currencies, these CBDCs, which is just hilarious. I've watched this unfold for 3 or 4 years now. Sorry?
Ultra tricky move. It's out of the place. It's like what they are trying to do. It's like, please just stay where you are and keep doing your thing, because you're gonna die eventually. Or I don't know. I don't get it.
I think it's a little bit like, how they bring out new notes. I don't know about in Mexico, but often in other European countries, they bring out, like, they make these new notes and new coins every 7 years or 8 years, and they go, oh, we're launching the new £5 note and £10 note. Wow, have you seen the new £5, 10? Oh, wow. I think this is a kind of a digital version of that, because we already have like digital currency, the central bank digital currency. They just punch it into a computer, right? So all they're doing, from what I can see here, is like automating a lot of that stuff away using proprietary blockchains.
They're just printing money, because people in Mexico, people don't have any access to open a bank account. Like, it's really rare. So the government objective is like to bring and digitalize people and start like opening accounts, because they're not paying taxes. We have informal jobs, like tons of them, and people is really, really they're used to trade with money, or even they're like introducing like trade with services and goods, like making just trade. So that's funny because I don't think that the government is going to win this fight to digitalize or to make the banking digital for them. But
I think it will be enforced.
It's likely that it will be enforced because at the end of the day, they need to increase their tax revenues, right? So that they can do whatever they claim they're going to do. But in Sweden, it's the other end of the perspective from Mexico, I guess, because in Sweden, it's quite a hyper-efficient economy, wealthy, blah, blah, blah. And now they've been working on the e-krona for 3 or 4 years. And I actually went into the Riksbank, into the central bank there, and interviewed with one of the project guys, project managers of that when it started out. And I spoke to a bunch of locals here, and along the way, Sweden is so famous for riding this PR. Like they have perfected their global PR. Sweden, like they can't put a foot wrong apart from this Corona decision stuff, which I think will be proven to be right in the near future anyway. But they basically rode this like innovation. We're very innovative. We're looking at these new digital currencies. You know, they were one of the first in the world. And now they've like we're doing it, and it's like nothing to do with blockchain. It's nothing to do with cryptocurrency. It's just a proprietary technology that they've developed internally that allows them to make these claims,
which are basically related to tracking. So they're just able to track all the transactions now. So there's no way for tax to be dodged. And that's the only real benefit for the person who's going to end up using it in their day-to-day life. They won't notice any difference at all. Maybe they'll see some more efficiencies because of they can use it on their phone, but it's the tracking and the identity relate, like how you know who's spending what, where, when, how. That's basically what they've done.
And how fast you're making a transaction. I think I don't know if I have this like right or clear, but the blockchain industry it became something like how fast you can make and how secure or block the operation. In terms of normal or conventional market or finance, it's like how fast can you make a transaction? How secure is that? I think that they become with this idea basically to track and understand if they can do the same thing in terms of time.
The data is what's valuable. So with open source cryptos like Bitcoin, anybody has access to all that data because they're open source, right? Central banks are like, nah. We need to close this thing down and make sure we own exactly all the data ourselves, because it's how we're going to like basically control the flow and take the pulse of the economy basically. So the only efficiencies for these central bank digital currencies are going to be benefiting the central banks, no one else. I mean, nothing that. But then that's where the interesting stuff happens into the future. Is like I imagine, I often like to fast forward 10 or 20 years and think about what's happening then. And I think you're going to have all the people that are subscribed to the central bank digital currencies who are just going about their willy-nilly days. But they'll be in the minority. I think a lot of other people will adopt open source blockchains because they can essentially, they're next to free to operate, and they also provide data sovereignty for their identity when they use them. So, but that all depends on whether or not the next generation gets educated enough in time.
Fingers crossed.